My name is Ethan Sterling. For 23 years, I've lived a life that felt like a borrowed book, one with a few pages torn out right at the beginning. I lived in Port Blossom, a city in Oregon that clings to the coast, perpetually damp and smelling of salt and pine. My world was small, circumscribed by the four walls of my tiny apartment above the Rolling Pin Bakery, the quiet, dusty aisles of the Dusty Shelf bookstore where I worked, and the online portal of the local community college where I was slowly, painstakingly, studying ecology. My life was a study in beige, not unpleasant, but muted. I found solace in the scent of baking bread that wafted up through my floorboards in the morning, in the weight of a hardbound classic in my hands, and in the quiet satisfaction of identifying a new species of fern in the thick woods that bordered the town. I was an island, and while the solitude was sometimes a heavy coat, it was also a familiar one. My family, my father, Robert, his wife, Brenda, and their children, my half-siblings Mason and Sophia, lived across town in a new development called The Willows. Their house was large and modern, all sharp angles and plate glass, a stark contrast to the gentle, weathered character of Port Blossom. I was the ghost at their family gatherings, a quiet presence in the corner, a reminder of a chapter my father preferred to keep closed. The story I'd been given was simple. I was adopted. My biological parents were strangers, and Robert and Brenda had graciously taken me in. Grandma Clara, Robert's mother, was therefore not my real grandmother, a fact Brenda reiterated with subtle but persistent cruelty. It was a story I had long ago stopped questioning. It explained the distance in my father's eyes, the carefully polite but firm wall Brenda maintained, the casual way Mason and Sophia treated me as something other, something less. The phone call came on a Thursday, a day so gray and misty it felt like the sky was weeping. I was sitting at my small formica table, spooning oatmeal into my mouth, the steam fogging the window that looked out onto the wet street. An unknown number from a local area code. I let it ring, my heart giving a familiar, anxious flutter. Debt collectors for my student loans, most likely. Or a telemarketer with an unbeatable offer on a cruise I could never afford. But on the fourth ring, a strange impulse, a whisper of intuition, made me pick up. Hello. Is this Ethan Sterling? The voice was a woman's, calm and professional, like the smooth, cool surface of a river stone. Speaking, I said, my own voice rough with sleep. Mr. Sterling, my name is Evelyn Reed. I'm an attorney with Reed and Thorne Legal. I'm calling in regard to the estate of Clara Sterling. I believe she was your grandmother. The spoon in my hand slipped, clattering against the ceramic bowl with a sharp crack that seemed to echo in the quiet room. Grandma Clara. She had passed away 3 months ago. A quiet fading, the hospital had said. I hadn't been invited to the funeral. It's a private family matter, Brenda had told me over the phone, her voice dripping with false sympathy. It would just be too confusing for everyone. The message was clear. I was not family. A knot formed in my throat. Yes, I managed, the word a small, tight thing. She was my grandmother. I need to schedule a meeting with you, Mr. Sterling. There are some matters concerning her will that require your personal attention. It's a matter of some urgency. I frowned, confusion cutting through the sudden fog of grief. I think there must be a mistake. My family, my father, told me I wasn't mentioned in her will. They said everything was being left to them. There was a significant pause on the other end, a silence filled with unspoken weight. Mr. Sterling, Ms. Reed said, her tone softening almost imperceptibly, I can assure you, there is no mistake. I think it would be best if we met in person. Are you available to come to my office this afternoon? 2 hours later, I found myself in a world away from my cramped apartment and the scent of yeast. The offices of Reed and Thorne Legal were housed in one of Port Blossom's historic brick buildings downtown, overlooking the marina where fishing boats bobbed gently on the tide. The air smelled of old wood, leather, and paper. I sat in a deep leather armchair that side when I sank into it, my worn flannel shirt and jeans feeling woefully out of place. Evelyn Reed was a woman in her late 60s, with sharp, intelligent eyes that were softened by a network of fine lines at their corners. Her silver hair was elegantly coiffed, and she regarded me not with pity, but with a kind of gentle, focused attention that was both unnerving and deeply comforting. On the polished mahogany desk between us lay a thick file with my name on it. "Thank you for coming on such short notice, Ethan," she began, her voice as calm as it had been on the phone. "As I said, I was your grandmother's attorney and the executor of her estate. She was a very dear friend as well as a client." She slid a document across the desk. It was the first page of the will, a dense block of legalese. My eyes scanned the text, catching phrases, "last will and testament of sound mind and body," and then a line that made my breath catch. "To my sole and beloved grandson, Ethan Sterling." I looked up at her, my heart hammering against my ribs. "I don't understand. This must be a mistake. I'm adopted. My parents told me so my whole life. Grandma Clara, she wasn't obligated to me. Brenda always said." "Ethan," she interrupted gently, leaning forward. "What your father and his wife told you is not the truth. Clara was very specific in her instructions to me. She knew this day would be difficult. She wanted me to give this to you." She retrieved a thick, cream-colored envelope from the file. My name was written on the front in a familiar, elegant script that slanted slightly to the right. Grandma Clara's handwriting. It was the same script from the handful of birthday cards she'd managed to send me over the years, cards that always arrived with a crisp $20 bill and a note that said, "Thinking of you, my dear boy," before Brenda put a stop to them, claiming they were confusing for me. My hands trembled as I took the envelope. The paper was thick and felt warm, as if it still held a trace of her. I broke the seal and unfolded the letter within. "My dearest Ethan, my little stargazer. If you are reading this, it means my time on this earth is done, and dear Evelyn has finally been able to reach you. It means the locks my son and his wife put on the doors between us have finally been broken. I've spent the last several years of my life in a state of quiet heartbreak, trying to reach you, only to be met with silence and excuses. So, before anything else, I must give you the truth. It is the greatest inheritance I can offer, and you have been denied it for far too long. The story you have been told is a cruel and selfish lie. You are not adopted, Ethan. You're a Sterling, bone of my bone, blood of my blood. You are the son of my beloved daughter, Lily." My vision blurred. I had to stop and wipe my eyes, my mind reeling. A daughter? I never knew my father had a sister. Lily was Robert's first wife. She was sunlight and laughter, a painter who saw the world in brilliant colors. She loved your father deeply, and when you were born, she said it was like the whole world had finally come into focus. She adored you, Ethan. She called you her little stargazer because of the way you would stare up at the night sky from her arms, your eyes wide with wonder. She died in a car accident on a rain-slicked road just after your second birthday. A part of our family died with her. Robert was lost in his grief. And 6 months later, he married Brenda. Brenda was efficient, practical. She wanted a new life, a fresh start, untainted by the ghost of the woman who came before. And you, my dear boy, were a living, breathing reminder of that woman. She wanted Robert to give you up for adoption, to erase you so they could begin their own family with a clean slate. To his everlasting shame, your father considered it. He was weak, drowning in his sorrow, and he allowed himself to be swayed. But I would not allow it. I fought for you, Ethan. I threatened Robert with a custody battle that would have torn our family apart and exposed their monstrous plan to the entire community. I told him that as long as I was breathing, you would remain a Sterling. They kept you, not out of love, but because I forced their hand. Brenda has never forgiven you for existing. Her resentment has been a poison that she has dripped into your life, day by day. She was the one who concocted the adoption story, a lie that insulated her own children from the truth and isolated you completely. Every time you were left out, every time you were made to feel like a burden, a stranger in your own home, that was Brenda's design, and it was enabled by your father's cowardice. I tried, my darling. I tried so hard to keep a foothold in your life. But Brenda was a fortress. She would cancel our visits, tell me you were ill. She wouldn't let you answer my calls. Eventually, they moved to the Willows, a deliberate choice to put more distance, both physical and emotional, between us. The last time I held you in my arms, you were a lanky 15-year-old, all elbows and shy smiles. They stole the last 8 years of your life from me, and for that, I will never forgive them. And so, I am leaving you everything. The house on Willow Creek Lane, the investment portfolio, the savings I have carefully tended. Not just because you are my grandson, but because you are the only one in this family who has shown true strength. You have faced the quiet hardships of your life with a dignity and grace that takes my breath away. I know about the bookstore, about your studies in ecology, about the tiny apartment you can barely afford. I know because when they cut me off from you, I hired a private investigator to ensure you were safe. He told me of your kindness, your diligence, your quiet resilience. I also know that Robert and Brenda have been living as if my fortune were already theirs. They believe the estate will be split amongst all the grandchildren. They have been spending lavishly, a down payment on an inheritance they feel entitled to. I have, I must confess, encouraged this delusion. They are in for a profound shock. I hope this inheritance brings you freedom, Ethan. The freedom to build a life of your own choosing, to follow your passions without the weight of financial burden. But more than money, I hope this letter gives you back your own story. I hope it gives you the truth you have always deserved. Know this, my dearest Ethan. You are not a mistake. You are not an obligation. You are, and have always been, deeply and unconditionally loved. All my heart. Grandma Clara. P.S. The keys to the house are with Evelyn. It's been waiting for you. The roses are in full bloom this year. I read the letter 3 times, the words swimming before my eyes. The foundations of my life, the very bedrock of my identity, had crumbled to dust. A mother named Lily. A grandmother who fought for me. A lie, 21 years long, designed to make me disappear. The quiet ache of not belonging that had been my constant companion wasn't a flaw in my own character, it was a cage that had been built around me. A sob escaped me, a raw, ragged sound I hadn't made since I was a small child. I wasn't an orphan they'd taken in. I was the son of the house, cast into the shadows. Evelyn Reed slid a box of tissues across the desk and waited patiently, her gaze full of a compassion that didn't feel intrusive. When my sobs subsided into shuddering breaths, she spoke softly. The investigator she mentioned, he provided detailed reports. Clara was very worried about you. She wanted to be sure you were managing. She pushed another, thinner folder toward me. I opened it with trembling fingers. Inside were photographs. Me, walking to work in the rain, my shoulders hunched under a thin jacket. Me, sitting under the dim light of my desk lamp, a stack of textbooks beside me. Me, eating a sandwich on a park bench alone. It was a portrait of a solitary life, and the knowledge that my grandmother had been watching over me, a silent, loving guardian, was both heartbreaking and beautiful. She had seen me, even when I felt invisible. My grief and confusion began to curdle into a slow, cold anger. What were they expecting to inherit? I asked, my voice hoarse. Evelyn's expression was grim. Clara was a clever woman. She let Robert and Brenda believe the estate was worth a great deal, and that it would be divided equally among you, Mason, and Sophia. She even allowed them to borrow against their expected inheritance for certain large purchases, knowing the day of reckoning would come. What kind of purchases? From what Clara told me and the investigator observed, they have been living far beyond their means. Robert purchased a new luxury SUV last year, a black Lincoln Navigator, for around $80,000. Brenda orchestrated a trip to Tuscany for the two of them that cost at least $30,000. And Sophia's entire designer wardrobe for her first year of college was funded by what they called an advance from Clara. I thought of the last time I'd asked my father for help a year ago. I needed $200 for a required textbook for my marine biology class. He'd looked at me with weary impatience. Ethan, you're 22. It's time you learned to stand on your own 2 feet. We can't be handing out money forever. He'd said that to me while standing next to a brand new $80,000 car. The hypocrisy was so vast it was almost dizzying. So what did they get? I asked, my voice flat. In the will. Evelyn consulted the document, though I knew she had it memorized. Mason and Sophia are each to receive a token amount of $2,500 to be used for their education, should they choose. Your father and Brenda received nothing. She looked me directly in the eye. Absolutely nothing. Clara's will explicitly states that Robert forfeited any claim to his inheritance the moment he chose to dishonor the memory of his first wife and emotionally abandon his firstborn son. I leaned back in the chair, the leather creaking in protest. $1.8 million in investments and savings. A house I remembered from my childhood as a place of light and warmth, filled with the scent of baking and roses. And the truth. A truth so staggering it changed the entire landscape of my past. There is one final thing, Evelyn said, her expression softening. A request from Clara. She asked that I be present when you inform your family of the will's contents. She said, and I quote, "They built their house on a foundation of lies, Evelyn. I want a witness present when the walls come down." And so, the next evening, I found myself driving my rattling old Honda Civic toward the Willows, with a seasoned attorney in my passenger seat and a certified check for a life-altering sum of money tucked into a folder on the back seat. The air was thick with the coming rain, the sky a bruised purple. As I turned into the subdivision, the identical, oversized houses with their manicured lawns seemed to mock the authenticity of the old, weathered parts of Port Blossom I called home. Brenda answered the door. Her perfectly styled blonde hair and crisp white blouse were a suit of armor. When she saw me, her polite smile faltered, her eyes narrowing. Ethan. What a surprise. Then her gaze shifted to the woman standing beside me, taking in Evelyn Reed's expensive trench coat and leather briefcase. Her expression sharpened with calculation. We need to talk, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. All of us. It's about Grandma Clara's will. The mention of the will was a magic word. The suspicion on Brenda's face was instantly replaced by a greedy, anticipatory gleam. Oh, of course. Please come in. She led us into a living room that looked like a page from a design magazine, all cool grays and chrome, with abstract art on the walls that felt cold and impersonal. Robert was on a massive leather sofa, watching a golf tournament on a television the size of a small car. Mason, home from college for the weekend, was slouched in an armchair, scrolling through his phone, while Sophia was taking a selfie, oblivious. The room smelled faintly of air freshener and nothing else. Robert, look who's here, Brenda called out, her voice bright and brittle. Ethan has come to talk about your mother's will. My father muted the TV, a strained but hopeful smile spreading across his face as he saw Evelyn. Well, it's about time we got this all sorted out. Thank you for coming all this way, Ms. Reed, Evelyn supplied, offering a cool, professional nod but not her hand. I was Mrs. Clara Sterling's attorney. Suddenly, we had everyone's undivided attention. Mason's phone went dark. Sophia lowered her own. Brenda perched on the edge of an armchair, a study in tense expectation. Yes, well, we appreciate it, my father said, rubbing his hands together. Mom was a wonderful woman. We're just glad her affairs are being settled. Actually, Evelyn said, her voice clear and precise in the quiet room, my business here tonight is with Ethan. The silence that fell was heavy and immediate. I don't understand, Robert stammered. Brenda's eyes darted from me to Evelyn. What does Ethan have to do with this? Evelyn opened her briefcase. I am here, as per my client's instructions, to inform Ethan of the contents of his inheritance from the estate of Clara Sterling. His inheritance? Robert's voice was a squeak. He looked at me, then back at the lawyer, a flicker of panic in his eyes. But there must be some kind of mistake. Ethan, he's not. I mean, he was never. He was never what, Mr. Sterling? Evelyn's tone was glacial. He's adopted, Brenda snapped, her voice sharp as broken glass. Clara wasn't his real grandmother. She had no legal or moral obligation to leave him a single penny. Evelyn turned her calm, steady gaze to me. Ethan, would you like to tell them, or shall I? This was it. The moment of truth. I stood up, my legs feeling surprisingly solid beneath me. I pulled the letter from my jacket pocket, its pages now soft and worn from my repeated readings. I learned I'm not adopted, I said, my voice quiet but carrying in the silent room. I learned my mother's name was Lily. She was your first wife, I said, looking directly at my father. And she died when I was 2. I turned my gaze to Brenda. I learned that you wanted my father to give me up, and the only reason he didn't is because Grandma Clara threatened to take him to court for custody. Brenda's face went chalk white. Mason and Sophia just looked bewildered, as if I'd started speaking a foreign language. That's a lie, Brenda hissed. That's a vicious, ridiculous lie. I also learned, I continued, my voice gaining strength, that Grandma Clara left me her entire estate. The house on Willow Creek Lane. All of her investments. And $1.8 million. The ensuing silence was so profound I could hear the hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. It was the sound of a world tilting on its axis. That's not possible, Robert whispered, his face ashen. He looked like he'd been punched. She promised us. She told me, she said the estate would be shared. She lied, I said, the words simple and clean. The same way you both lied to me for my entire life. Sophia was the first to find her voice. Wait. What about us? What do we get? Her voice was shrill with indignation. Evelyn consulted a paper from her folder. You and your brother, Mason, will each receive the sum of $2,500. $2,000, that's it? Mason exploded, jumping to his feet. That's an insult. What about the house? The stocks? All of her money. It all goes to Ethan, Evelyn stated calmly. Brenda shot up from her chair. This is an outrage. We will contest this. He has no right. We were the ones who cared for her, who visited her in that nursing home. Actually, Mrs. Sterling, Evelyn countered, her voice dangerously smooth, Clara's personal diaries, which she instructed me to read, document extensively that you actively prevented Ethan from having a relationship with her. They also document that your visits often coincided with requests for financial assistance. You are welcome to contest the will, she went on, but Clara anticipated this. The will is ironclad, witnessed by 3 independent parties, and she underwent 2 separate psychiatric evaluations in the final year of her life to confirm her lucidity and competence. Any legal challenge would be costly, public, and ultimately futile. My father sank back onto the sofa, his face in his hands. Ethan, son, you have to understand. We were just trying to protect you. Protect me? The question came out sharper than I intended. Protect me from what? The truth? The knowledge that I was loved? From my own grandmother? From my own mother? I looked at him, at this man whose approval I had craved for so long. It looks to me like you got everything you wanted. You got to bury the memory of your first wife and start over. You got your perfect new family. The only thing you didn't count on was your mother seeing right through you. We raised you. Brenda cried, her voice laced with desperation. We gave you a home. Doesn't that mean anything? You gave me a roof and food, the legal minimum, I replied, my voice calm again. And in return, you made sure I felt like a stranger in my own life every single day. You took my history, my identity. You can't put a price on that. I looked around the pristine, sterile room. The navigator in the driveway. The trip to Tuscany. Sophia's clothes. How much debt are you in, thinking you had Grandma's money to bail you out? Robert wouldn't look at me. It was Brenda who whispered the number, a figure so low it was almost inaudible. Over 100,000. Well, I said, turning to leave. I guess you'll have to figure it out. That's something you were always good at telling me to do. As Evelyn and I reached the doorway, a small voice stopped us. Ethan, wait. It was Sophia. Her face was pale, her usual confidence gone. You're not really going to take everything, are you? We're still family. I turned back and looked at her. Sophia, who had always treated me with a kind of benign neglect, as if I were a piece of furniture. Family? I asked, my voice soft. Was I family when you cropped me out of the Christmas photos? Was I family when you went on vacations and I was left behind? Was I family when you stood by and let your mother tell everyone I was a charity case she'd taken in? My voice didn't rise, but each question landed in the silent room with the weight of a stone. But you could help us, Mason pleaded, his bravado gone, replaced by a whining desperation. You could share it. We could all get through this. The money is helping, I said. It's helping me. I'm the one Grandma Clara wanted to help. I looked at my 2 half-siblings. You want help? Get a job. Take out a loan. Figure it out. We were at the door when Brenda made one last, desperate appeal. Ethan, please. We made mistakes. But he's still your father. I'm still the only mother you've ever known. I paused, my hand on the doorknob, the cool metal a grounding presence. I turned my head slightly, not looking at her, but at the empty space beside her. Robert is my father, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Lily was my mother. You were just the woman he married. We stepped out into the cool, damp air, leaving them in their beautiful, hollow house, the silence within now filled with the wreckage of their lies. For the first time, I felt the wind on my face not as a chill, but as a promise of cleansing rain. A year has passed. I live in Grandma Clara's house now. It's a cedar-shingled home on Willow Creek Lane, tucked away behind a screen of weeping willows. The air inside smells of lemon oil, old books, and faintly roses. The house welcomed me as if it had been holding its breath, waiting. In a cedar chest at the foot of her bed, I found what I now think of as my true inheritance, photo albums filled with pictures of a smiling, dark-haired woman holding a baby with wide, curious eyes. My mother, Lily. And me. There were photos of family gatherings from a time before, where a younger version of my father looked genuinely happy, his arm around his wife, the three of us a complete and solid unit. I also found the letters she'd written but never sent. Birthday cards for my 16th, 17th, 18th birthdays. A letter describing her pride when she heard from a friend that I'd won a science fair prize. Each one was a testament to a love that had persisted, stubbornly, in the face of imposed silence. With the freedom the money provided, I finished my ecology degree, graduating with honors. I didn't need to work, but the quiet purpose of the bookstore had been a sanctuary for too long to abandon completely. I still work there 2 days a week. The rest of my time is spent on a new project. I used a portion of the inheritance to purchase a neglected plot of land on the edge of town and established a nonprofit community garden project. We call it the Lily Pad, a space where families can learn to grow their own food, and where kids from the local youth center, many of whom are in foster care, can come and have a patch of earth to call their own. It's a place for putting down roots. My old family exists at the periphery of my new life. Brenda sends meticulously chosen greeting cards on holidays, filled with saccharine messages about forgiveness and the importance of family. I put them, unopened, into the recycling bin. Mason and Sophia had to get part-time jobs. The bank repossessed the Navigator. They are learning, slowly and painfully, that actions have consequences. Robert has tried to reach out. He has left voicemails, his voice thick with a regret that sounds genuine but has come 20 years too late. For months, I didn't answer. Then, last week, on a warm summer evening, his old sedan pulled up in front of the house. I was in the garden, tending to my grandmother's roses, the scent sweet and heavy in the air. I watched him get out of the car and walk hesitantly up the path. He looked older, smaller than I remembered. He stopped at the edge of the rose bushes, his hands shoved awkwardly in his pockets. "The garden looks beautiful," he said, his voice quiet. "Your grandmother, she'd be happy." I didn't say anything, just snipped a dead bloom from a bush. "Ethan, there's nothing I can say that can fix what I did. What I allowed to happen. I was a coward. I was drowning, and I let Brenda throw me a life raft, and I didn't care that you were left in the water." Tears welled in his eyes. "I am so sorry." I looked at him, at this man who was half my story, and I felt, not forgiveness, not yet. But the burning anger had cooled, leaving behind a vast, quiet space of sorrow. I saw him not as a monster, but as a weak, broken man who had made a terrible choice and had been living with it ever since. I stood up, wiping the soil from my hands. I walked past him, up the steps, and opened the front door. I went into the kitchen, filled a glass with cold water from the tap, and walked back out onto the porch. I held it out to him. "You look thirsty," I said. He took the glass, his hand shaking so badly that water sloshed over the rim. He looked at me, his eyes full of 1,000 unspoken questions. I didn't have the answers for him. I might never have them. But in that small, simple gesture, I felt a shift inside myself. It wasn't about him. It was about me. It was about choosing compassion over bitterness, peace over turmoil. It was about setting a new boundary, not of anger, but of calm, quiet self-respect. He drank the water, and I went back to my roses. We stood there for a long time in the fading light, two strangers bound by blood, separated by a chasm of lies. I don't know if we will ever be able to build a bridge across it. But for the first time in my life, I felt firmly planted on my own side, in a garden of my own making, breathing in the sweet air of the truth. And I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that I was finally home.